Welcome back to another explosive episode where politics meets passion, truth challenges power, and bold voices refuse to back down. If you thought American politics couldn't get any more intense, think again, because Representative Jasmine Crockett just made waves that might reshape the entire narrative in a moment that has gone viral, sparked national debate, and sent shockwaves through Washington. Congresswoman Crockett stood her ground and delivered what many are calling a total obliteration of Donald Trump, and she did it all live on national television. Let's break down exactly what happened, how it unfolded, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future of American politics. But first, for those who are unfamiliar, Jasmine Crockett is a rising star in the Democratic Party, a former civil rights attorney, now a U.S. representative from Texas. Crockett has built a reputation for being unapologetically bold, sharply intelligent, and fiercely committed to justice. She's not the kind of politician who speaks in vague platitudes. She gets to the point, and when she does, people listen. This particular moment started during a heist live televised hearing, one of those moments where all eyes are glued to the screen and politicians are well aware that every word they say might be dissected, quoted, or turned into a headline. The topic: Donald Trump's legal troubles, his ongoing influence on the Republican Party, and whether or not the country is moving closer to another constitutional crisis. Trump supporters on the committee were doing everything in their power to shift the narrative, defending him against mounting legal challenges and suggesting that the investigations were nothing but partisan witch hunts. As usual, they tried to redirect the blame, downplay Trump's involvement in events like January 6th, and even attack the media for bias. But what they weren't prepared for was Jasmine Crockett's rebuttal when Crockett took the floor. Her energy was instantly different, calm, poised, but radiating an undeniable intensity. She began by methodically laying out the facts: drums, indictments, the criminal investigations, the overwhelming evidence presented in multiple jurisdictions. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult anyone personally. She just let the facts do the damage. And when she spoke, there was no room left for misinterpretation. She said, and we quote, "We're not going to continue the American public into believing that justice is partisan if you commit crimes, whether you're rich, poor, black, white, or a former president who should be held accountable. That's not political, that's justice." That one line alone sent shock waves across the internet. Social media lit up. Commentators began quoting her. Hashtags were born. But Crockett didn't stop there. With surgical precision, she dismantled every Republican talking point thrown at her. When a colleague tried to interrupt her, suggesting that Trump was the victim of a deep state conspiracy, Crockett turned to them with a sharp smile and said, "Victimhood is not a substitute for innocence." You could hear a pin drop in that room. She continued by referencing Trump's own words, the ones he has spoken on rallies, interviews, and in his infamous social media post. She reminded everyone watching that Trump himself has admitted to actions that would be considered illegal if done by anyone else. She said, "When you brag about taking classified documents, when you pressure officials to find votes, when you incite a crowd to march to the Capitol, you're not being targeted. You are confessing, and no amount of spin will erase the record." But as she spoke, the expressions on some Republican committee members changed from smug to stunned. They weren't ready for that level of articulation. And for many Americans watching from home, it felt like the moment they had been waiting for, someone finally calling out the nonsense in a way that cut through the noise. But it wasn't just what Crockett said. It was how she said it. She balanced outrage with grace, fury with focus. She even quoted the Constitution at one point, reminding the nation that no person shall be above the law, and added, that includes former reality TV stars turned presidents. By this point, the internet had exploded. Political analysts began calling it one of the most powerful moments in recent congressional history. Commentators across both liberal and conservative outlets were forced to acknowledge that regardless of where you stand politically, what Crockett delivered was a masterclass in public accountability. It didn't end at the hearing either. After the session, Crockett appeared on multiple news outlets, and when asked whether she had intended to go after Trump so directly, she replied, "I'm not going after anyone, I'm going after the truth. And if the truth is uncomfortable for some people, maybe they need to reflect on why." That simple statement once again hit hard, because she made it clear this isn't about party, it's about principle. And Crockett in that moment became more than just a rising star. She became a symbol of moral courage in a time when the country is deeply divided Now Trump supporters, of course, didn't take this lightly. Within our social media accounts linked to his base began attacking Crockett, digging up old interviews trying to frame her as part of the so-called radical left. But the attacks felt flat compared to the tidal wave of support she was receiving. Hashtags like hashtag Crockett for Truth and hashtag Jasmine Unleashed started trending. Memes, fan edits, reaction videos, every corner of the internet had something to say. But here's where it gets deeper. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just speaking for herself that day, she was giving voice to millions of Americans who are tired of watching politicians dodge responsibility, people who are frustrated with the erosion of norms, the elevation of celebrity over service, the transformation of democracy into a chaotic reality show. When she spoke, it wasn't about left versus right, it was about right versus wrong. And for Donald Trump, whose strategy has long been to dominate the narrative through sheer force of personality, Crockett presented a rare challenge. Because she wasn't trying to be louder, she wasn't interested in fighting fire with fire. She was more like water, steady, unrelenting, and impossible to ignore. In the days that followed, her speech was replayed on every major network. Late-night hosts, praised her, columnists wrote about her, and perhaps most telling of all, some moderate Republicans began privately admitting that she had made some undeniably valid points. One even told a reporter off the record that you can only ignore the truth for so long before it catches up with you. Of course, politics is never static. There will always be another Sikangdan, another controversy, another distraction, but moments like this where truth cuts through the noise are rare. They remind us of what leadership should look like. And in this case, it looked like Jasmine Crockett standing tall on live television, refusing to be silenced, and holding power accountable with the precision of a surgeon and the strength of a warrior. As we move forward, this moment will likely be studied, replayed, and remembered. It wasn't just a clapback, it wasn't just a viral outbite, it was a statement, loud, clear, and unshakable, that no one is above the law and that the next generation of American leadership isn't here to play games. So whether you're a Democrat or Republican, an independent, or just someone who's tired of the chaos, one thing's for sure, you'll want to keep your eye on Jasmine Crockett. Because if this moment showed us anything, it's that the future has a voice, and that voice is not afraid. Before we wrap up, let's just pause and appreciate what this signifies for our political culture. For too long, conversations about accountability have been twisted into partisan blame games. But Crockett refused to play along. She didn't just destroy Trump's narrative, she dismantled the entire machinery of excusem that surrounds him, and she did it with style, strength, and smarts. That kind of courage is rare, and it deserves to be recognized, remembered, and repeated, because only when more voices like Crockett rise to the surface will we begin to heal the damage that disinformation and ego have inflicted on our democracy. So to everyone watching, stay informed, stay curious, and don't let the noise drown out the truth. Moments like these are why we keep watching, why we keep asking questions, and why we continue to believe that better leadership is not just possible, but already rising. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful, powerful, or just plain necessary, make sure you stay tuned for more real talk, more analysis, and more moments that matter. Because this isn't just politics, it's the future. And if Jasmine Crockett has anything to say about it, that future is looking a lot brighter. The ripple effects of that live moment are still being felt. Political experts and analysts are now debating whether Crockett's words might be the turning point in how the public views not just Donald Trump, but the normalization of his behavior over the last several years. Because let's be honest, what used to shock America has become almost routine. The chaos, the lies, the finger-pointing, the insults, they've become part of the political wallpaper. But what Crockett did wasn't just powerful, it pierced through that fog. It's also worth noting that Jasmine Crockett isn't your typical politician. She's part of a new wave of representatives who aren't beholden to the old rules. They didn't climb a ladder by playing nice or staying quiet. They earned their seats by speaking the truth, organizing communities, and refusing to back down when it mattered most. And that's exactly what America saw that day. The emotional responses from people across the country were telling. Viewers were moved. People who had long felt that their frustrations with political double standards weren't being heard finally saw someone saying what they've been feeling for years. And for Black women in particular, who are so often overlooked or dismissed in political spaces, Crockett's words were especially powerful. She wasn't just representing her district, she was representing every person who's ever Been told to calm down, to wait your turn, or to not rock the boat? Crockett didn't just rock the boat, she capsized it. And while the media was quick to jump on the story, the moment took on a life of its own far beyond traditional outlets. TikTok creators started stitching clips of her speech with their own reactions. Instagram reels spread like wildfire on Twitter, now known as ex-political influencers and journalists called at the moment. That defined this term's hearings, but maybe the most striking thing about the entire situation wasn't the media coverage or even the trending hashtags. It was Trump's silence. Normally, we all know how Trump operates. A critic emerges, and within hours there's a retaliatory post, a rally mention, or at the very least a dismissive nickname. But in this case, silence, whether that silence was strategic or a sign of being genuinely caught off guard, no one knows. But what is clear is this: Crockett didn't just take a swing, she landed a blow that hit hard enough to keep Trump unusually quiet. And behind-the-scenes insiders in Washington have revealed that what Crockett said didn't just make an impression on viewers, it stirred conversations on Capitol Hill. Some Democrats, inspired by her boldness, are beginning to reevaluate their own communication styles. They're realizing that voters don't want safe, they want real, they want fearless. On the other side of the aisle, some Republicans, especially younger or moderate ones, are being forced to ask themselves whether continuing to defend Trump's behavior is sustainable, because each time someone like Crockett speaks out with such clarity and conviction, it gets harder and harder to justify the blind loyalty. That loyalty, once a political asset, is now starting to feel more like an anchor pulling the party deeper into irrelevance. And let's not forget the global impact of moments like this. Internationally, America's political chaos is often met with confusion, if not ridicule. But Crockett's speech reminded the world that the United States still has leaders who care deeply about truth, accountability, and justice for allies watching from Europe, Asia, Africa, and beyond. It was a sign that integrity in American politics isn't dead. It's just been overshadowed until now. One prominent political columnist wrote, Jasmine Crockett did in 5 minutes what years of hearings, debates, and investigations couldn't. She crystallized the stakes in a way every American could understand. So what comes next? Crockett, for her part, has made it clear she's not slowing down. She's already proposed new initiatives focused on strengthening ethical standards in government and restoring public trust in institutions. Her team reports a surge in donations, volunteer signups, and interview requests. But more than that, she's now being mentioned as a possible contender for leadership roles both within her party and beyond. And while it's too early to predict where her career might go, one thing's for certain: she's got the attention of the nation, and in politics, that's half the battle. As for Trump, the fallout from her takedown may just be beginning. Legal experts have already pointed out that her recap of the facts on live TVs are clear, so damning, might influence public opinion in ways that court proceedings and legal filings never could. Because when people hear something on a screen from someone who speaks like them, looks like them, and stands for them, it hits different. And that's the real power of what Jasmine Crockett did. She didn't just obliterate a political opponent. She reminded us what courage looks like. She showed us that telling the truth is not a radical act, it's a necessary one. And most importantly, she proved that the voice of the people still has a place in government halls, no matter how loud the corruption may get. So, to every viewer who's felt disillusioned by the state politics, to everyone who's watched injustice go unanswered, who's heard lies repeated like gospel, who's wondered if integrity still matters, this moment was for you. Jasmine Crockett's message was clear: America doesn't need more celebrities in politics, it needs more truth. Teller's dart, and whether you agree with her politics or not, you have to respect the fire she brought to that stage. Because it wasn't just about Trump, it was about every person who thinks they're too powerful to be held accountable. It was about reminding the nation that justice is not a brand, it's a principle. So stay alert, stay engaged, and remember, the next time someone says one voice can't make a difference, point them to this moment, to this woman, to this truth. Thanks again for watching. And if you made it this far, you're not just here for the drama, you're here for the facts, the nuance, and the fight for something better. We see you, we appreciate you, and we'll be right here bringing you more truth, more analysis, and more moments that matter. Because this story, this movement, it's just getting started.